The heavy cream envelope landed on the doormat with a thud that echoed through the empty hallway. I stared at the fancy gold calligraphy, thinking it was just another wedding invite from a college friend. My hand trembled as I reached down to pick it up because I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was the same penmanship that used to sign anniversary cards to my mother for 30 years. I flipped it over and saw the return address embossed on the back flap. Robert and Linda request the honor of your presence. I felt the bile rise in my throat, seeing their names intertwined in gold foil. He had the audacity to send this to my house after I changed the locks. He had the nerve to mail this to the apartment where I grieved alone. I walked into the kitchen and tossed the unopened envelope onto the granite counter. It slid across the surface and hit the fruit bowl with a soft tap. My phone started buzzing in my pocket almost the second the letter landed. I pulled it out and saw his face on the caller ID. He was calling to make sure I got it. He was calling to force a reconciliation that I never asked for. I let it ring until it went to voicemail, and then I stared at the screen. The silence in the apartment was deafening, but my mind was screaming. I could still smell the antiseptic of the hospice room where my mom took her last breath. I could still see Linda holding my mom's hand while my dad was conveniently absent. They were playing house while my mother was wasting away to nothing. I grabbed the envelope again and ripped it open with violent force. The card inside was thick and expensive, usually reserved for high society galas. It said they were getting married at the country club my mom loved, the same venue where my parents had their silver anniversary party. My vision blurred as I read the date, which was 2 days before Mom's birthday. He was trying to replace her memories with his new life. The phone started buzzing again, and this time I answered it without thinking. I put the phone to my ear and heard his voice for the first time in 6 months. He sounded calm and happy, as if he hadn't destroyed 2 lives. He asked if I received the invitation because he wanted to ensure the post office didn't lose it. I told him I got it and I was currently holding it over the trash can. There was a pause on the line before he sighed, that familiar disappointed sigh. He told me to be reasonable because it had been long enough. He said Linda was family, and I needed to stop being so stubborn. I asked him how he could define family when he destroyed ours from the inside out. He said everyone makes mistakes, but love is complicated. I laughed, a cold, bitter sound that scraped my throat. I reminded him that cheating on your dying wife with her best friend is not a mistake. It is a calculated choice made over years of deception. He told me not to bring up the past because we are living in the present. He said Linda loves me and wants to help me move forward. I told him that Linda looked me in the eye at the funeral and hugged me. She accepted my tears on her shoulder while knowing she was sleeping with my father. He said they were just waiting for the right time to tell me. I asked him if the right time was supposed to be while Mom was still warm in the ground. He raised his voice for the first time, saying I was being childish. He said life goes on, and he deserves to be happy after caring for a sick wife. I felt my blood boil because he did not care for her. I was the one who changed the sheets when she was too weak to move. I was the one who fed her ice chips while he was working late at the office. Now I know those late nights were spent in Linda's bed. I told him that I would never step foot in that wedding. He said if I don't come, I am throwing away my inheritance and my future. He threatened to cut me out of the will completely if I did not show up. He said he would give everything to Linda's kids because they respect him. I told him he could keep his money because it was tainted with guilt. I could hear Linda in the background whispering something to him. He repeated her words, saying that Mom would want us to be happy. That was the breaking point that made me grip the counter edge. How dare he speak for the woman he betrayed while she was dying? I told him to never say her name again unless he was apologizing to her grave. He said I was being melodramatic and I would regret this decision. He said everybody else had accepted them and I was the only one holding a grudge. I asked him if everybody else knew the truth about when it started. There was silence on the other end of the line because he knew the answer. He had lied to everyone, saying they got together after the funeral. Only I knew the truth because he slipped up while drunk that one night. He admitted they had been together for 3 years before Mom passed. That meant every chemotherapy session he missed, he was with her. That meant every anniversary dinner he rushed through, he was going to her. I told him I would post the truth on social media if he did not leave me alone. His tone shifted instantly from aggressive to panicked. He told me not to air private family matters in public. He said it would ruin his reputation at the firm and in the community. I told him his reputation was built on a foundation of lies. I hung up the phone before he could say another word. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the device. I looked at the invitation still sitting on the counter. The gold foil seemed to mock me under the kitchen lights. I walked over to the trash can and held the invite over the bin, but something stopped me from dropping it in. If I threw it away, it was like hiding the evidence of his cruelty. I needed to keep it as a reminder of why I cut him off. I took a picture of the invitation and sent it to my brother who lives overseas. My brother's reply came through instantly with just 3 question marks. I called him and we sat in silence for a moment, just breathing. He asked me if Dad had called me too with the same script. I told him yes, and that Dad used Mom as a bargaining chip. My brother said he was not going even if Dad paid for the flight. We talked about how Linda used to bring casseroles when Mom was sick. We talked about how she would sit in the living room drinking tea with Mom. The betrayal was not just romantic, it was a violation of friendship. Mom trusted Linda with her deepest fears about dying. And all the while Linda was waiting for her to die so she could take her place. My doorbell rang suddenly, making me jump out of my skin. I walked to the peephole and saw my dad's car in the driveway. He had driven over immediately after I hung up the phone. I saw him standing on the porch adjusting his tie in the reflection of the glass. He looked older than I remembered, but just as arrogant. I debated not opening the door, but I knew he would not leave. He would stand there ringing the bell until the neighbors complained. I unlocked the deadbolt and swung the door open without putting on the chain. He smiled at me like we were just having a casual Sunday visit. He tried to step inside, but I blocked the doorway with my body. He asked if he could come in so we could talk like adults. I told him whatever he had to say could be said on the porch. He looked around to see if anyone was watching before speaking lowly. He said he was sorry for how the phone call ended. He said he was under a lot of stress planning the wedding. I asked him why he thought I cared about his wedding stress. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He said he found Mom's old locket and thought I should have it. He was trying to bribe me with my own mother's jewelry. I stared at the box, remembering how Mom wore that locket every day. Inside was a picture of me and my brother when we were kids. He held it out to me with a hopeful look in his eyes. I took the box from his hand and clutched it tight. I thanked him for returning what was rightfully mine. Then I told him it changed nothing about the wedding. His face hardened and the nice guy mask slipped off again. He said I was being ungrateful after everything he provided for me. He listed off my college tuition and my first car as debts I owed him. He said children owe their parents respect regardless of their choices. I told him respect is earned, and he lost his when he cheated. He stepped closer, getting in my face to intimidate me. He said I did not know what it was like to be in a loveless marriage. He said Mom was sick for a long time, and he had needs. I felt a rush of pure rage that made my vision go white. I pushed him back, not hard, but enough to make him stumble. I screamed at him that Mom loved him until her last breath. She worried about him being lonely while she was dying. She encouraged him to find someone else after she was gone. She never knew he had already found someone else years ago. He straightened his jacket and brushed off his shoulders. He said the past is dead and I needed to grow up. He said Linda was waiting in the car and wanted to say hello. I looked past him and saw her silhouette in the passenger seat. She was checking her makeup in the visor mirror without a care. The woman who held my mother's hand while stabbing her in the back. I told him if she got out of that car I would call the police. He shook his head, saying I was dramatic, just like my mother. That comment stung more than any of the others. He turned around and walked down the steps toward his luxury sedan. He stopped at the bottom and looked back at me one last time. He said the offer still stands until the weekend. If I did not RSVP yes by Sunday, he was removing me from the trust. He got in the car and I watched them drive away slowly. I stood on the porch until their taillights disappeared around the corner. I went back inside and locked the door, turning the deadbolt twice. I sat on the floor of the hallway clutching the velvet box. I opened it and looked at the photo of us when we were a happy family. I wondered if he was cheating even back then, when the photo was taken. I wondered how many of my childhood memories were a lie. My phone pinged again with a text message from an unknown number. It was a long paragraph from Linda herself. She said she was sorry I was upset, but they were in love. She said we could be a big happy family if I just let go of anger. She said my mom would want me to have a mother figure in my life. The audacity of her trying to step into Mom's shoes was sickening. I blocked the number immediately without replying. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water with shaking hands. I needed to calm down before I did something irrational. But the anger was a living thing inside my chest. I thought about the wedding at the country club. There would be hundreds of guests who thought they were a great couple. They would toast to their happiness, not knowing the bodies buried underneath. I realized Dad was right about one thing. The reputation was everything to him and Linda. They wanted the big wedding to validate their relationship publicly. They wanted to erase the affair by painting over it with a ceremony. If I went, I would be complicit in their lie. If I stayed away, I looked like the bitter child who could not move on. I felt trapped between two terrible options. I looked at the invitation again, reading the date over and over. 2 days before Mom's birthday was a deliberate choice. It was a power move to reclaim the date for themselves. I walked into the living room and sat on the couch staring at the wall. My eyes landed on the urn sitting on the mantel. I had kept Mom's ashes because Dad did not want them in the house with Linda. He said it made Linda uncomfortable to have her there, so I took her with me when I moved out. I walked over to the mantel and touched the cool metal of the urn. I apologized to her for not seeing the sign sooner. I apologized for being nice to Linda all those years. I remembered one time Linda came over for Christmas dinner. She brought a gift for Dad that was clearly too expensive. Mom had laughed and said Linda was always so generous. Now I knew it was a token of their affection right under Mom's nose. The memories were replaying in my head like a horror movie. I needed to talk to someone who understood the nuance. I called my Aunt Mom's sister, who lived 2 states away. She answered on the first ring as if she was waiting for me. She had received an invitation to, and she was furious. She told me she burnt hers in the fireplace immediately. She said the whole family was talking about the audacity of the date. She told me Dad had called her trying to explain his side. He told her that Mom gave them her blessing before she died. I gasped audibly because I knew that was a bald-faced lie. Mom died terrified of leaving him alone. She never knew about Linda, and she never gave a blessing. He was rewriting history to make himself look like the hero. My aunt said she told him to go to hell and hung up. She asked me how I was holding up being so close to him. I told her he came to my house and threatened my inheritance. She said the money was not worth the price of my soul. We talked for an hour about how Dad used to be different. We wondered when the change happened, or if he was always like this. After we hung up, I felt a little less alone in the world. But the threat of the weekend deadline was still looming. I knew he was serious about cutting me off. He used money to control everyone around him, including Mom. Mom stayed with him through the hard times because of financial security. Now he was using that same leverage against his own children. I went to my laptop and opened up a blank document. I started writing down everything I remembered from the last 3 years. Every suspicious late night and every unexplained receipt. I wrote down the dates of the chemo appointments he missed. I wrote down the times Linda was at the house when Mom was asleep. It was like putting together a puzzle of betrayal. I realized I had enough evidence to blow their story apart. If I released this information, it would destroy his image. The partners at his firm valued family values above all else. If they knew he was sleeping with a dying wife's friend, it would end him. But doing that would also drag Mom's name through the mud. People would pity her and call her a fool for not knowing. I did not want her legacy to be the wife who was cheated on. I wanted her to be remembered for her strength and kindness. I closed the laptop without saving the file just yet. I needed to sleep on it before making a move. I went to my bedroom and laid down staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was a group chat. My cousins were discussing the wedding invitation. Some of them were saying they might go just for the open bar. Others were saying it was disrespectful and they were boycotting. One cousin asked if I was going to be the best man. I almost threw the phone across the room at the question. They did not know the full extent of the situation. They just thought Dad moved on a little too fast. They did not know the overlap was measured in years. I typed out a message to the group chat, explained briefly. I said there was no way I was attending or supporting this union. I said the relationship started while Mom was still fighting cancer. The group chat went silent for a long 5 minutes. Then the messages started pouring in with shock and support. They had no idea about the timeline or Linda's identity. Word would spread through the family vine within hours. Dad would know by morning that I had spilled the secret. I felt a small sense of satisfaction knowing he would panic. But I also felt a pit of dread in my stomach. He would retaliate and it would be ugly. He knew secrets about me that I did not want public. He knew about my financial struggles after college. He knew about the therapy I needed after Mom died. He would weaponize my grief to paint me as unstable. I rolled over and pulled the covers up to my chin. I tried to close my eyes, but the adrenaline was pumping. I heard a car slow down outside my window, and I froze. I crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. It was just a delivery driver dropping food at the neighbors. I was paranoid, thinking he would come back to silence me. I knew he wouldn't not hurt me physically, but emotionally he was brutal. The night dragged on, and I watched the clock turn to 3 a.m. I finally dozed off only to have nightmares about the wedding. In the dream, Mom was there, sitting in the back row, crying. She was watching Dad and Linda exchange vows over her grave. I woke up sweating and gasping for air. The sun was coming up through the curtains, casting long shadows. I got up and made coffee, feeling like I had been hit by a truck. The envelope was still sitting on the counter where I left it. I picked it up and walked to the shredder in my home office. I fed the thick paper into the machine, watching it disappear. The sound of the blades chewing through the gold foil was satisfying, but the problem was still there waiting for me. I knew I had to make a final decision before the deadline. I could go to the wedding and pretend everything was fine. I could secure my inheritance and keep the peace, or I could stand my ground and lose everything material, but keep my dignity and my loyalty to Mom. I thought about what Mom would actually say if she were here. She was a peacemaker who hated conflict above all else. She might have told me to just go and get it over with, but she also did not know the depth of the betrayal. She did not know her best friend was the other woman. That changed the equation entirely. I sat down at my desk and pulled out a pen and paper. I decided to write a letter to Dad instead of calling. I wanted my words to be clear and uninterrupted. I wrote that I loved him because he was my father, but I could not respect him as a man anymore. I wrote that his happiness was built on Mom's suffering. I wrote that Linda was not family, she was an intruder. I told him to keep his money because I would make my own. I folded the letter and put it in a plain white envelope. I did not use fancy gold foil or embossed lettering. It was simple and stark, just like the truth. I walked to the post office before work to mail it. I wanted it to have a postmark so he knew it was official. As I dropped it in the slot, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. But as I walked away, my phone rang again. It was Dad, and he left a voicemail this time. I listened to it while standing on the sidewalk. His voice was ice cold and sent shivers down my spine. He said he heard what I told the cousins in the group chat. He said I had declared war on the family. He said if I did not publicly retract my statement, I was dead to him. He said he was calling his lawyer to rewrite the will today. He did not wait until Sunday like he promised. He was punishing me for speaking the truth. I stood there watching the cars drive by, feeling numb. I had just lost my father completely, but in a way I had lost him years ago. He died the day he decided to betray Mom. The man who raised me was gone, replaced by this stranger. I deleted the voicemail and blocked his number. I walked to my car and sat in the driver's seat. I looked at myself in the rear-view mirror and saw Mom's eyes. I knew I made the right choice, even if it cost me a fortune. But now I have to deal with the fallout. The wedding is in 2 weeks, and the family is divided. Half the family believes him and thinks I am being bitter. The other half is horrified and refusing to go. He is blaming me for ruining his big day. He is telling everyone I am mentally unstable from grief. He is spinning a narrative that I am the villain. I am wondering if I should show up just to object, or if I should let him have his fake fairy tale. I am wondering if I should release the evidence I have. The receipts and the timelines are damning. It would destroy him, but it would hurt everyone else too. I am standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to jump. The invitation is shredded, but the date is burned in my mind. I can feel the ghost of my mother watching me, waiting to see if I will defend her honor or save myself. The world feels heavy and gray without her here. I just want to hear her voice telling me it will be okay. But all I have is the silence of an empty apartment, and the echo of my father's threats in my head. I start the car and drive toward work on autopilot. My life has split into before and after the letter. I am terrified of what comes next, but I cannot go back. I hope one day he realizes what he threw away. But knowing him, he will just rewrite the story again. He will convince himself he is the victim in all this, and Linda will nod along, drinking tea from Mom's cups. The thought makes me grip the steering wheel until my knuckles turn white. I am done being the good son who keeps secrets. I am done protecting a man who protected no one. The war he mentioned has officially started, and I am going to finish it for Mom's sake. I just do not know if I will survive the crossfire. The wedding date is approaching like a ticking bomb, and I am the only one holding the wire cutters. What would you do if you held the match that could burn it all down? Would you light it or let them live in their lie? Because I am flicking the lighter and watching the flame dance, and the temptation to drop it is getting stronger every second.